And welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining us for the Hachette Book Group's School and Library Preview. My name is Laura Lutz and I'm the manager of Children's School and Library Marketing here at Hachette. This is a re-recording of our intro because of technical difficulties during the original book buzz. We're so excited to have you here with us today. You're going to be hearing from the publisher of Workman Kids, as well as two amazing Hachette authors with exciting upcoming titles. Following our speaker presentations, my colleague Jasenia and I will share several exciting upcoming titles from our fall 2023 and winter 2024 lists, and we'll also tell you about our giveaway for our live attendees. So stay tuned. As a reminder, this presentation is being recorded, and we'll share a link to the recording after the presentation concludes. If you're sharing any titles that you're excited about over social, we would love for you to follow us and tag us on Insta and X, the platform normally known as Twitter. And we're also now on TikTok as well. See the slide for our account information. And without further ado, let's begin. So first up, we have Stacy Lello. She's the publisher of Workman Kids, including Algonquin Young Readers. Stacy has worked in publishing for more than 30 years and is an enthusiastic visionary for such brands as Brain Quest and Big Fat Notebook. Stacy is going to be sharing a sneak peek of an exciting upcoming summer 2024 series called The Kids in Mrs. Z's Class. The first two books in a chapter book model that we're inventing right here at AYR and Workman. And the concept is that there are 18 kids in Mrs. Zamora's third grade class. And each kid has been created by a different beloved children's author playing in the shared world of this classroom. And each kid will star in a book written by that author who will bring all their audience experience and cachet to this series. We have four amazing authors for the first four books. We have Kate Mesner, New York Times bestselling author. We have Rajani LaRocca, Newbery Honor winner. We have Karina Jan Glaser, another New York Times bestselling author. And we have Will Alexander, National Book Award winner. And the list goes on from there, including Newbery Medal winner Meg Medina, Coretta Scott King's superstar Tekla Magoon, Newbery honoree Kyle Lukoff, and Hannah Khan, Lamar Giles, Elliot Schreifer, Teresa Batiste, and I'll let Stacy tell you more about it.
Hannah Khan, Lamar Giles, Elliot Schreifer, Tracy Batiste. I mean, right? You guys? Next. And all of them have come together to create this amazing lineup of kids I can't wait for you to meet. Diverse, dramatic, funny, real kids bursting with secrets and stories. Our series illustrator is Kat Fajardo, a Pura Belpré honor winner for Miss Quinces, which you might remember from a couple years back. Next slide. For our first two books, publishing next summer, we have Emma McKenna Full Out, written by Kate Mesner. Emma is super excited to be starting at a new school and in a new class, but she's carrying a secret, what happened at her old school, with her former best friend, Lucy Hooper. When Lucy shows up in Mrs. Z's class, as well, Emma decides she needs to make friends as quickly as possible before Lucy can tell anyone her secret. And her efforts at fast friendship will have you laughing out loud and saying, "Aw," in equal measure. Next slide. Then we have Rohan Murthy Has a Plan, written by Rajani LaRocca. You know that kid who gets super, super enthusiastic about an idea and launches it with a lot of fanfare and the best of intentions and gets everyone else excited too. And then it turns out that that idea has maybe outpaced their execution skills. I know you know what I'm talking about. Well, that's Rohan, who develops a formal plan for a pet care business that will raise lots of money for the school garden, neglecting the tiny little detail that he doesn't know much about animals and is somewhat scared of them. How he comes to face his fears and remake his plan will again leave you both smiling and sympathetic. Next slide. Every book will include delightful black and white illustrations throughout, as you can see here, and here, and here, and here. Next slide. As well as two spreads at the beginning, introducing all the kids in this class, encouraging readers to get familiar with them and curious about them. So they'll be looking forward to Carlotta's book and Fia's book and Memo's book in turn. Kate tells a great story about this series. She was doing a 2-day school visit last spring with some third graders, and she told a small group of kids that she and some author friends were creating a whole class together. The next day, when she came back, that group of kids tracked her down to tell her that they were so inspired by this project that they had started creating their own class together and writing their own version of this series. Isn't that terrific? So we'll be publishing 2 books in summer 2024 in time for back to school. And then we'll have 2 more books in winter 24 and 2 more the next summer and ideally 2 more books each season all the way through 2027 until every kid has their own book. And we have big marketing plans for this, especially in the school and library space. In fact, authors, Kate and Rajani will be embarking on a select pre-publication tour of the Northeast in May of next year. There might be decals on their car. And we'll also be encouraging teachers to make these books their first read aloud of the 2024-2025 school year, setting up themes of curiosity and community that can carry a class all year long. Thanks so much for your attention and excitement, and keep an eye out next June for the kids in Mrs. Z's class.
Thank you so much, Stacy. Next, author speaker, Dr. Seema Yasmin. Seema is the author of the upcoming ABCs of Queer Kids. She's a medical doctor, disease detective, professor, and journalist. She's currently the author of 5 books, including a poetry collection and a What Fake News called What the Fact? Finding the Truth in All the Noise. Yasmin's journalism appears in the New York Times, Wired, Scientific American, and other outlets, and she regularly appears as a medical analysis on CNN. She is so accomplished and awe-inspiring. So excited for you all to meet her. Introducing Dr. Seema Yasmin.
Thank you so much, Laura and Stacy, and to the whole team for making this possible. And thanks everyone for joining. I love seeing all the different places that we are zooming in from today. So as Laura mentioned, I'm Dr. Seema Yasmin, the very proud and enthusiastic author of the ABCs of Queer History, which is a book that is chock full of celebration and inspiration and the stories of queer trailblazers from across history. I think what's really fun about this book is that it's not just a book you have to pull if you want to have a serious conversation about queer history, although of course you can pull it and read it for that reason, but it's also a really intersectional and really diverse book. So because it's got athletes in it and rock stars and amazing playwrights and writers and authors, and it's got politicians and poets and all these amazing people, it's just a really great entry point, or that it offers so many great entry points for people who are interested in science or literature or space. It was a joy to write. And I have to say, like, without getting bogged down in all the negative stuff that's surrounding us these days, it just feels like a book that is more needed and more urgent with each day. So I'm really excited that it's going to be on your shelves by next April. The illustrations are so beautiful. And even for those kids that aren't reading yet, I think they'll be so drawn in by the illustrations and the diversity that's shown in these spreads. So you just see families of all different kinds of configurations, right? Because that's a reality for children. You see people from across history going back hundreds of years, but including modern day queer trailblazers that some kids will be familiar with. I'd love to show you some of the spreads if we can bring those up, just to give you an idea, a little bit of a flavor of what the book includes. So here we have F is for Family, which, while I said this book is a celebration, it's also really honest with children in an appropriate way about some of the struggles and challenges that queer people of all ages might face. And that includes sometimes, sadly, estrangement from family or issues with family. And so it talks here about the fact that family can be the people that you are born into, but family can also be chosen. It's those people that you find along the journey, along life's path, who love you just as you are and who love you for all the things that you are. F also talks about friends and the importance of friendship, which actually comes up quite often throughout the book. And it talks about fluidity, the fact that there's all these different terms that are explained in the book, but that no one, no matter their age, should feel pressured to pick one particular word or one particular identity. And it talks honestly about how the fact that as we grow, these things shift over time. Next up, I want to show you, which is for groundbreaking, if we can bring that up, which talks about a modern day trailblazer, the athlete Michael Sam, who played for the NFL and just a few years ago did something that's still considered radical in this day and time, which was speaking openly about his sexuality. We also see Barbara Jordan, who was an amazing politician who paved the way for so many other Black women and queer people to become lawmakers. I want to show you the spread for R next, which is a really joyous celebration. It talks about reminisce, rejoice, and renew for all the people that blazed a path for us to fight for equality, fight for justice, and fight for representation. Pictured here is someone you probably will identify as Little Nas X. And again, as I said, there are people included in the book that are historical figures, so a great way of teaching that, but also modern day trailblazers that kids will have heard of and will recognize. I keep saying trailblazers because the next spread I want to show you is T for trailblazers, which includes Janelle Monáe, modern day singers and actors, and also some YouTube influencers. So I love the fact that there are so many diverse characters here, and diversity, I mean, in terms of gender expression, in terms of race, in terms of where they are in like the historical timeline. There's geographic diversity as well. There's disabled people who children will recognize. The images themselves, we've got people who are in wheelchairs, and all of that was really important to me to make sure that kids see in this book a reflection of the real world and of their lives. And like I said, the entry points you can pick could be that there's a child that has a particular fascination with space. And we've got in this book, the first American woman to jet into space was actually a queer woman. Whether a kid, perhaps they're really into writing or they love stories. We've got celebrated authors and icons in here. We've got dancers, choreographers, people that invented dances, and that history, I think, opening up those conversations and those stories to show just how big of a contribution queer people have made over the years can be really eye-opening, but also really affirming and reassuring to children who might feel like they're struggling with their feelings or they don't feel included. I do identify as queer and as Muslim, and I have known that I was queer for as long as I can remember, but wouldn't have necessarily used that word, right? And the language evolves and shifts over time, which is really interesting and also can be challenging. So let's show you the next spread, which is just a little taste of the back matter. And I share this because it's really important to me that you, as librarians and educators and people who read to children, feel reassured that you won't be out of your depth when you pull this book and start reading with kids and all of the profound and huge questions that they ask. The back matter has you covered. It's in depth, but it uses really plain English. And honestly, it clarifies things that so many of us, me included, will sometimes mess up on, including things like the distinction between, well, if you're wondering what exactly is the difference between sex and gender, and if a kid's asking me that big question, how do I actually explain that in a way that's accurate and honest, but is accessible to them and makes sense to them. As a doctor, which Laura mentioned, that accuracy is really important to me. But as a children's book author, it's also really important that that accuracy makes sense to children, that they feel seen and they feel represented. The back matter also talks about that fact that language evolves over time, which is a beautiful thing. But it's also an interesting and challenging thing. There are people who are historical figures who are in this book that might have used different words to describe their identity 100 years ago or even 50 years ago, right? Language shifts so much and it can be quick and it can be overwhelming. And so again, to make sure that you don't feel overwhelmed by that either, the back matter clears up lots of those acronyms and those definitions. I think you can see from the spreads that it's super colorful, super inclusive. Each spread offers entry points into conversations about what that a certain family unit having a picnic in one corner looks like, or what a boy and girl might represent in some other part of the spread. So lots of entry points into good, healthy, interesting conversations about identity, about friendship, about acceptance. And while the book is a huge celebration of being queer, because that's so important, it also is honest in talking about the history of oppression and being honest that that oppression continues to this day. So I'd love to see if there are any questions. If not, I can go on because I'm very excited by this book. And as I mentioned, as someone who I knew I was queer, even though I didn't know what to call that, I knew I was queer from a very young age. I didn't have books like this. And I'm really excited by the fact that kids will be able to see themselves, or if not themselves, they'll be able to see a representation of their parents or their guardians or their adopted families. So that's really important to me. And as I mentioned, without getting bogged down in the negativity that surrounds us, honestly, I feel like every time I'm scrolling my timelines on social media or checking the news and seeing some new legislation that's been passed by someone, this book just feels even more urgent, even more necessary. And so I'm getting more and more excited about it being out there and all the conversations that it will spark. Yes. Are there any questions? And also Stacey and Laura, feel free to answer them too.
I was going to answer this in the chat, Seema, but someone is asking about the age range.
And what have we written actually on the book? I think it's like 3 to 6. Did I get that wrong?
It's like you said, it's even if you aren't at a reading age, you can share it.
Yeah. And I love that part. Yeah, sorry, Laura. I was just going to say, I love that part of it is that it is accessible to people of different ages. And honestly, as I was writing it and I shared some of the back matter or was with my friends or was getting people to like proofread things for me, they were like, oh my gosh, this is so useful. I needed this explanation when I was talking to my parents about gender the previous week. So I think it's accessible to people of all ages. And even for those kids that aren't reading yet, the beautiful art, the diversity, the representation in the illustrations, the kind of stories you can concoct from all that's going on in those spreads is such a great entry point into the book and such a great entry point into conversations about our feelings, about our families, about friendships, about tolerance and acceptance, and about oppression too. Someone from Hachette has written the age range is 3 to 99 plus, which I have to agree. I don't know if that's actually going to be on the book or if it's going to say something more like 3 to 6. But as I mentioned, it was funny sharing back matter with adults who were like, oh, I wish someone had explained the difference between gender and sex to me like this ages ago. So yeah, the back matter's for all of us, but definitely there to make you feel reassured and capable of explaining this stuff. And also having those conversations, those really honest conversations about how language shifts and how ideas shift, and that that's okay. And the way we get through that is by having really good conversations, by being curious, by being respectful, and by asking questions. So I'm excited for this book to be a resource for people of all ages. Peers for Pride is really nice. And I think we'll be doing lots of events around Pride Month next year. But my hope and my dream really is for kids to see this and not feel lonely, not feel that being different, whatever that might mean, is a bad thing or a sad thing or a lonely thing. And I should say the book talks a lot about being an ally. So if you're picking this up and you don't identify as queer, or maybe you're questioning, or you're just not sure yet, then there's so much affirmation and explanation about what being an ally means. And it's not just a noun, it's not just a name you give yourself. Being an ally means that you speak up when people are being oppressed. You speak up if someone is being bullied. You speak up if someone is not being treated fairly. And being an ally means that every day you're doing things to try and make the world a fairer place, a better place, and just as inclusive a place as it should be. And lots of celebration and kind of like forecasting, like, wouldn't that be amazing if we just lived in a world where as long as everyone is kind and honest, they should be accepted, they should be celebrated, they should be loved for all that they are. Laura said this in the chat, and I was saying this to, I think, Kim earlier, who's joining us today from Houston, Texas, that I'll be speaking at TLA next April, the Texas Library Association, about this book. a novel, a young adult novel I have coming out next summer, and about that book, What the Fact, that Laura mentioned. That came out last September. The paper book actually is just about to come out. And What the Fact is a YA nonfiction book about how to separate fact from fiction. So it's a cool media literacy and critical thinking resource. So really excited to get this conversation going. As you can see, I'm bubbling with energy and excitement because I just feel like this book is so necessary, and I'm excited for kids and adults to be exploring it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sima. Hi. That was lovely. Thank you so much once again. Hi, everyone. I'm Yesenia Corporan, the Wholesale Sales and Library Marketing Coordinator here at Hachette. I have the great pleasure of introducing Naomi Hirahara. Naomi is an award-winning author of history books, mysteries, YA fiction, and the author of the upcoming A Child's Introduction to Asian American and Pacific Islander History. Naomi is a former editor of the Rafu Shimpo newspaper and a curator of historical exhibitions. Her nonfiction book, Terminal Island, Lost Communities of Los Angeles Harbor, won the Bruckman Award for Excellence from the Los Angeles Public Library, and her middle grade book, 1001 Cranes, was awarded honorable mention in youth literature from the Asian Pacific American Libraries Association. We are so happy to have her here with us today. Please welcome Naomi Hirahara.
Okay. Can you all hear me? I hope you can. Yes. Yes. Great. It's wonderful to be here with Hachette. And this is actually the second book I'll be working with one of Hachette's imprints. And it was really wonderful. Yes.
We're having we can't hear you.
Okay.
Yes. I think she asked.
Hello.
Oh, can everyone hear her?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, okay, it's just me. All right, carry on.
Okay. So as I mentioned before, this is my second outing with Hachette, and the first book was in conjunction with the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center in producing We Are Here, which was a spotlight on 30 inspirational Asian American and Pacific Islanders. And with this book that's coming out with Black Dog and Leventhal coming out next year, we will be looking specifically more at the history and kind of the breadth of the Asian American and Pacific Islander experience. And you could just imagine that's a huge topic. So I kind of wanted to give you, share some page proofs so you could get a taste of what this book covers. So next slide. So the main question is, who are Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders? And that's actually a loaded topic because many times Pacific Islanders have gotten short shrift in these books that are supposed to be representative of the fullness of the AA and PI experience. But here with our book, we put the experience of Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders center stage. We start off with the Pacific Ocean because that's the common location, the geography where the individuals in our book, our populations, started to come and cross over to the United States or go from the Pacific Islands to the various locations throughout the United States as well. I think this book just in terms of, and when we talk about just Asian Americans, it's such a vast group of individuals. So what I want to do, what I did with this book is kind of broke down the geography. We have a couple of wonderful spreads with maps. One includes all the areas in the Pacific Island area, as well as Asia, East Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia. And probably all of us kind of need a refresher course of where is Cambodia? You know, where is Laos? Where's the Philippines? And kind of get a better sense to orient ourselves on where the roots of some of the families that we deal with in our classrooms. So next slide. So I even included a map of the United States. So usually when we talk about Asian Americans, we immediately think, right, of Hawaii and also the West Coast. I'm a native Californian, so I do have that bias, or else the East Coast. But the way that our nation has been evolving over time, we know that these populations are everywhere. And even myself, I had my own stereotypes because I spent 9 months in a writing workshop in Wichita, Kansas. And when I left California, people were giving me soy sauce. They were giving me top ramen. And I'm thinking, I think they have soy sauce in Kansas, only to find a vibrant, like Laotian and South East Asian population there, part of the diaspora from the refugees that came after the Vietnam War. So I wanted all of those experiences reflected. So for instance, on this map, we highlight places like Louisiana. That is actually where the first settlement of Asian Americans, specifically Filipino immigrants, had come in the 1700s. So, and we're looking, those kind of stories, I think, remind us and remind our children, remind everyone that the experience of Asian Americans in this country is not necessarily a new one. So next slide, please. Part of this book too, in addition to talking about history and talking about the chronology of different anti-Asian legislation, the different kind of hurdles that our ancestors had to face in order to come here and settle here. We also have spotlights, and it was really wonderful to hear from Dr. Yasmin and how she handled the celebration of the LGBTQ community here in the United States. And in the same way, we're looking at like sports, we're looking at arts, high tech, food, as well as civil rights. So we highlight individuals like this man on the left-hand side. He ran a laundry, the Yik Woo, in San Francisco. And it just so happened that the city of San Francisco said that laundries owned by Chinese Americans or Chinese immigrants, they had to be shut down. And it was unfair labor practices, and as a result, this laundryman, he took his case to the high court and won. And because he claimed that was a racist legislation, and his case to this day is being applied to very discriminatory policies today. So I picked certain individuals and certain cases that had ramifications for us today, including this gentleman on the right-hand side who was fought in the Civil War and was the first soldier to be allowed to wear a turban in conflict. So these are the type of veteran, the type of pioneers that are highlighted throughout the book. Next slide. Another big part of Asian American and Pacific Islanders are the culture. And one part is the filial piety, the honoring of our elders, which according to like Pew Reports is very unique and special. And it has some roots in Confucianism and some other kind of cultural history. So, for instance, on this page, I list some of the names that Asian American children or Pacific Island children called their elders. And all of us probably have heard it, like popo or tutu and those kind of things. So we wanted to kind of honor that kind of multi-generational household. So things like that are there. We also spotlight the practice of when a Korean baby turns one. They have a lot of different kind of celebrations, and one is to put different kinds of toys in front of them and or items, and seeing which one that the child will pick, and that will illuminate its future. It's, I'm not saying that's science, but it's just a fun way to that the Korean Americans celebrate their young ones. Next slide. And this is our last one. Of course, I had to talk about food and also kind of demystify, because when we think about Asian American food, we think about chopsticks, and we do have different types of chopsticks here, but that's more like an East Asian thing. There's people like in Thailand, the people of Cambodian and Filipinos, that, chopsticks are not their utensil of choice. It's like the spoon and fork. And examining the different reasons, like examining these kind of fun things, I'm also talking about colonialism that existed in these various home countries that impact them today. So even though this is it seems like a pretty fun and straightforward book, Sarah, and I have to thank the illustrator, Sarah de Monteverde, for doing these colorful, wonderful illustrations that really bring life to the content. But there's underneath it are more complexities. And I think, it actually may help adults as much as children to really understand kind of the diversity of all these communities that are under Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. So this book will be available in April of next year, and I hope you get it from for your classrooms and engage in discussions about food, about culture, about and leadership. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Naomi. So fantastic. Like I said, I always learn something in the chat. I always learn so much from children's books. One of my favorite parts about being in this work. So real quick, we've had some technical difficulties, but just to remind everybody that we are recording, and this recording will be available and sent out afterwards, so you can catch up on anything you might have missed. And now, without further ado, me and Jacindy are going to share with you some of our upcoming titles from our fall 2023 and winter 2024 lists. And we are starting with picture books. Wonderful. I am thrilled to begin our list with Sashiko's Stitches by the wildly talented author-illustrator Sun-Ai Ishida. Sashiko is a young girl with very big feelings. When her mother teaches her about her namesake, the traditional Japanese practice of mending through embroidery, she finds an outlet for some of those emotions. Next slide, please. With each stitch, the dark cloud around her lightens until her big fears begin to feel less scary. As she heals tears in the fabric, she begins to find a sense of calm and hope. The images on this slide can't possibly do these illustrations justice, though I do think they are very close here. On the page, they're just so lush and richly textured and deeply evocative. Next slide. The back matter explores the materials, tools, and stitches commonly used in the practice of Sashiko. Sun-Ai has truly created a special story that will resonate with all of us who have big feelings. Discover Sashiko in April 2024. And now on to Jacinia.
Great. Next, we have Floof. I feel like this is a good time to admit to you all that I grew up not liking cats. I know. Luckily, I have since come to my senses and can share in the absolute adorableness that is Floof. Floof is an extremely busy cat with a lot of friends and important work to do. Click. But best of all, Floof is the floofiest. Look at all the work. The text says one thing and the illustrations say quite another in this irresistible new picture book for cat lovers, cute lovers, and anyone who has ever been a little bit mischievous. You know, so adorable. I can't. And this pub's in April. Next slide. Mama is a work of art. Celebrate tattooed moms with a delightful, loving, and inclusive picture book that's perfect for fans of Love You Forever. In My Mama is a work of art, a young boy whose mom is tattooed from head to toe discovers that beauty in the world is subjective and learns to value difference and self-expression when he sees the world through the lens of his strong, wise, and creative mother, who is a living work of art. Their illustrator, Hannah Acabado, and inked mother herself, truly crafts an extremely beautiful and colorful picture book. I constantly found myself stopping just to make sure I captured like every little tattoo on each page. I really loved it and appreciated all of them. And this pub's in April. Sticks versus Stones. Best friends Georgina and George are in the middle of a fight. Although the title might give this away, Georgina believes sticks are better for building, and George believes that stones are better. Soon the argument escalates to shouts of, "I don't want to be your friend." "No, I don't want to be your friend." This sounds too familiar. That is until two new friends show them a better way. Next slide. As they argue, George and Georgina build grander and grander structures, resulting in delightfully whimsical depictions of castles and thrones built from sticks and stones, and they learn that working together is more fun than being right. A lesson that we all should have. This picture book makes for a laugh out loud storytime experience while showing kids the importance of having an open mind and being willing to consider someone else's point of view. This pub's in March. Next slide.
Okay. We're getting those slides back up. Myself. All right. So we're getting those slides back up, but in the meantime, we are going to move on to middle grade. And I cannot wait for you all to see this cover. The first title is called Winnie Nash is Not Your Sunshine. And I put it first because, quite frankly, it is a personal favorite of mine, as is author Nicole Melleby. Now, here we go. Wait till you all see this cover. It's summer personified. So Winnie Nash is Not Your Sunshine is by author Nicole Melleby, and no one does middle grade LGBTQ plus literature like Nicole. And she has done it again with Winnie Nash. Winnie is so not excited to spend the summer on the Jersey Shore with her grandmother. Not only are they basically strangers, but Winnie, who's always known she's gay, has been pushed into the metaphorical closet by her parents, who worry what her grandma will think. So Winnie keeps quiet about the cute girls she befriends. She plays card games with seniors, which she does not enjoy, and dreams of the day she can go to the Pride Parade in New York City, a day that can't happen when she's hiding the truth from her grandma. Meanwhile, her mom's latest pregnancy is approaching its due date, and Winnie is worried it might end up like the ones before. with Winnie still an only child. As she tries so hard to be an agreeable, selfless daughter, getting to NYC for Pride is feeling more and more like her only escape from a family who needs her to always smile. Winnie Nash is not your sunshine, and maybe it's time to show the world who she really is. This story is both heartbreaking and heartwarming, with themes of friendship, identity, parental mental wellness, and multi-generational relationships. And this pub's in hardcover and paperback, and is available April 2nd, just in time for summer reading. I mean, those glasses, look at that with the reflection of New York City. I can't even. Next slide, please. And now for something completely different, I'm excited to introduce to you The Solvers, a truly unique graphic novel series by John Chad that mixes superhero adventures and antics with math concepts. When the evil Null Void steals the Div Multi-Ray, a laser gun that can multiply or divide anything it touches, the Solvers must learn all about multiplication and division to stop the supervillain in her tracks. Next slide, please. Throughout the action-packed narrative, clear step-by-step instructions and illustrated superhero-themed examples present essential multiplication and division concepts in an easy-to-understand way. As a former school librarian myself, I so wish I could have had this series when I was working to collaborate with my fellow educators. I consistently struggled with ways to work with the math department. You know, library, math, like how are they going to work together? And this would have been such a fun way to do so. Hosting a math book club in the library with a math teacher, that would have been so much fun. So even though I did not get that opportunity, now you all have the opportunity to host a math book club in your libraries. The Solvers is available in February 2024. Next slide. And now we move on to our young adult titles. Next slide. We lead off our YA list with Clever Creatures of the Night by Samantha Mabry, author of the award-winning Tigers, Not Daughters. When Case shows up at the isolated West Texas house where her best friend Drea lives with friends from school, Drea is nowhere to be found. Where is Drea? Why would she ask Case to visit and then disappear? With 24 hours until her ride home, Case intends to find out. But Drea's roommates can't or won't answer any questions. They leave Case to search alone, to find bits and pieces of Drea's life hidden in and around the house, while they continue playing out a rural utopian fantasy. Their bizarre behavior puts Case on edge. Something bad happened in this house. Something that must be connected to Drea's disappearance. And if she gets too close to the truth, Case might just be next. Between the suspense of a tight 24-hour timeline, the creepy characters you cannot trust, and a missing teenager, I know we use this word a lot in publishing, but this is unputdownable. Samantha leaves just enough to the imagination, so much so that several of us in-house, I hope I can confess this, those of you who are on this in this webinar, but those of us in-house have a lengthy text thread going, discussing our theories and guesses about what exactly might have happened, because he leaves just enough to the imagination. So we're all guessing just as much as librarians and kids are going to be too. You'll get to come up with theories of your own when this is available in March 2024. Next slide. And now for something actually completely different. This is Fault Lines by Nora Shalloway Carpenter. Ever since her beloved aunt died, 17-year-old Viv is aching to figure out where she belongs. Her father has become emotionally distant, and even her best friend has found a new sense of identity in her theater group. Unfortunately, nobody in her rural West Virginia town has time for an assertive, angry girl. On top of everything, she discovers a strange ability to sense energy that really freaks her out. The only place Viv feels like it's safe to be her true self is the tree stand where her aunt taught her to hunt. So when fracking destroys the stand and almost kills her, Viv vows to find a way to take the gas company down. When Dex Matthews comes to town, a new kid whose mom lands a job laying pipeline, his and Viv's worlds collide, and a friendship, or maybe more, slowly blossoms. But Viv's plan to sabotage the pipeline company could result in Dex's mom losing her job, putting them on the streets. Now Viv and Dex have to decide what's worth fighting for: their families, their principles, or each other. This is a slow burn romance that deftly weaves in threads about socioeconomics, environmental activism, magic realism, and grief, I know that's a lot. And she just like seamlessly weaves all of those together really, really well. Give this to your readers who love character driven, thoughtful, deep stories that they can get lost in. And this is actually available now. Next slide.
And
Thank you, Laura. From West Virginia to Paris. Next we have If I Promise You Wings by A.K. Small. We meet 17-year-old Alex Leclerc. She just landed an internship at the Paris premier feather boutique, where her dreams of becoming a renowned feather artist, creating statement pieces that define glamour and high fashion, seem closer than ever. But while Alex tries to lose herself in this new world, the grief of losing her best friend Jean just a few months ago starts to loom. Since her death, Alex has felt compelled to live as Jean did, taking risks she never would have before. Soon Alex begins stealing feathers for her own use, a serious offense at the boutique, and finds herself caught in a love triangle between Raven, a brooding and handsome fellow artist that has made her his muse, and Blaise, an old, awkward, but charming schoolmate who is trying to offer her solace and healing, even as she pushes him away. Set in Paris with the dazzling backdrop of Madame Salom's feather boutique, If I Promise You Wings is a beautiful and lyrical story about chasing promises, overcoming grief, and falling in love. And this pubs in January. Next slide. Here I Am Me by Carabine. It's no secret that division, loneliness, and polarization are on the rise, and recent research has shown that it's been affecting all generations, especially kids and young adults, who have been feeling disconnected and hopeless. Here I Am Me is an illustrated graphic novel-style nonfiction adventure through the brain that demystifies and destigmatizes emotional and mental health for children ages 12 and up. Next slide. Each of the 9 chapters explores a different aspect of mental health, from the brain to feelings and emotions. The book explains what is really going on in the reader's head in an accessible and approachable way, while never talking down to its reader. Author-illustrator Carabine is a veteran high school art teacher who found that through art, her students felt safe, exploring and releasing pent-up emotions that they at times had difficulty articulating. In Here I Am Me, she masterfully discusses crucial topics like depression, substance use, and suicide, all while equipping readers with mindfulness tips, specific resources, and empathetic affirmations. I am extremely proud that we are publishing this title and think that it's one that is needed in all shelves, not only for kids. And this pubs in April.
All right, so before we move on, I just want to call out 3 award-winning titles that will be available in paperback in 2024. Next slide. How You Grow Wings, a debut from Rima Anaceta, was a Kirkus and SLJ Best Book of the Year. The Science of Being Angry by our friend Nicole Melody received 2-star reviews and was an ALA Rainbow Booklist selection. And African Icons, 10 People Who Shaped History by Tracy Batiste, which received 3-star reviews and was named both a Kirkus and SLJ Book of the Year. Will all be available next year in paperback. Next slide. And now we move on to our upcoming nonfiction titles.
Great. Next we have Who Got Game? Basketball. The second book in the Who Got Game series by Newbery Honor winner and superstar Derek Barnes. Who Got Game Basketball, continuing in the footsteps of Who Got Game Baseball. Basketball weaves together great storytelling, lively illustrations, and a far-ranging selection of facts, stats, and sidebars. Barnes also shines a light on the amazing unsung heroes in basketball, the buzzer beaters and record breakers, who haven't always gotten the attention they deserve, including Muggsy, the shortest player ever to star in the pros at 5'3". We all have a chance. And the legendary women of the sport like Coach Pat Summitt. I personally will be using it to drop some interesting facts during game nights. This pubs in January, and look out for Who Got Game Football in 2025. Next, we have Rainbow Science, which is the last title for me. There is nothing like seeing a rainbow appear after the storm. I know we New Yorkers are really feeling that lately after all the downpours we have been experiencing. But although universally loved, do we really know how rainbows are formed? In rainbow science, kids will learn and celebrate everything rainbow, from the science of sunlight to how our eyes all see the colors. Kids will learn through engaging illustrations, easy to understand explanations, and age-appropriate hands-on fun experiments that will have them making their own rainbows with a hose, spinning homemade color wheels, blowing multicolored bubbles. They'll even learn how to search for rainbows. This will pub in March. Thank you for listening. It's been a pleasure being here and sharing this time with you. Now back to Laura.
I want to briefly call out the newly minted second edition of How to Turn $100 into $1 Million. Don't we all need this book? In the ever-changing world of finance, it was time for a refresh on this 2016 title. In addition to the original book's information about earning, saving, spending, and investing money for kids, this updated edition includes new sidebars and an entirely new chapter, along with a dynamic new cover. Next slide. Sample business plans and budgeting templates will help kids grow into, hopefully, into financially savvy adults. And this pubs in March 2024. Next slide. This is a personal favorite. It's so gorgeous. Our last title, The Incredible Octopus by renowned marine biologist Aaron Spencer, combines amazing photos with in-depth facts to get kids excited about octopuses and the underwater world in which they live. Readers are introduced to the fascinating biology of the octopus, from its 3 hearts and 9 brains to suction cups and how they work, and learn all about what it's like to be an octopus, how they use camouflage and ink, what they eat, and how they reproduce. This is just like we were saying in the chat earlier. I learn something new every time I read children's books, and this book was exactly the same. The book also explores the octopus's intelligence and playfulness, and of course the famous stories of octopuses who escaped their tanks. Next slide. Readers will meet 13 different species of octopuses and find out what makes them unique, from the most venomous and best disguised to the deepest and coldest. To quote Cy Montgomery, this is, quote, a great introduction to some of the weirdest and most wonderful animals of the sea. The Incredible Octopus swims into the world. Yeah, I did. April 2024. Next slide. All right, I just wanted to briefly share our giveaway for live attendees. For those in attendance, we will randomly draw a name at the conclusion of our preview for a complete set of A Child's Introduction to series. So we have A Child's Introduction to Pride, Hip Hop, Jazz, Environment, and Space Exploration. Best of luck to all of you, and thank you again for attending live. And next slide. Last but not least, I would be remiss if I didn't pause to recognize Banned Book Speak. To quote Stephen King, I hope some of you have heard this quote before, if they ban a book in your school, haul your ass to the nearest bookstore or library and find out what they don't want you to read. In the 2022-23 school year, PEN America recorded 3,362 instances of books banned, an increase of 33% from the prior school year. And as we know, some librarians and teachers who support banned books are losing their jobs and or are being threatened with violence. Hachette Book Group stands with our authors and illustrators and with educators and librarians as we fight to protect the freedom to read, one of the most important foundations of a free society. In addition to making a donation to We Need Diverse Books Save Lives initiative, among other measures, Hachette has also created a landing page on our website with a list of resources, along with titles currently being challenged and banned in the U.S. Read a banned book today and support all our authors and illustrators. Think freely, speak freely, heaven's sakes, read freely. Next slide. And there we go. And that concludes our preview right on time, which I was not sure was going to happen. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Our contact information, both me and Jasenia, is listed on the slide. And as I mentioned, the entire recording and presentation will be shared with attendees shortly after the preview. Thank you again so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.